Democratic Alliance's virtual conference that is currently underway, and we start off with that story. The DA says its virtual elective congress, the Democratic Alliance says that its virtual elective congress, which is currently underway, will continue and will lead to the party electing a new leader, and that leader being either John Steenhuisen or Mbalintuli. Let's go straight into that Congress, which is currently underway, and they're currently voting on the amendments to the Constitution.
Policing people's genuine freedoms.
Thank you, Nicole. The last person speaking on this item is Ashol Sarapin from Gauteng, and he's online. Ashol, over to you.
Thanks, Kevin. The review committee of the party already found that our social media policy was unconstitutional for restricting freedom of speech last year. And this amendment says that if you cause unnecessary offence, you'll be disciplined. I'm sure that sounds fine, but my colleagues in Parliament defend the ANC every time they call them corrupt. And the ANC have even litigated against some of my colleagues for causing them such offence by saying that they're corrupt. Now, what will happen is that the ANC will just complain to the DA, even take the DA to court for not disciplining its members in terms of its own constitution when the ANC feel offended. This amendment is very broad, it's not well thought through, and risks destroying our ability to hold the government to account for fear of offending them. So I urge that we vote against it strongly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashol. As indicated on the slide, the Constitutional Review Committee recommends not supporting this amendment for many of the reasons that have been presented here this morning. So with that, we're going to move on to Amendment 10. This has been proposed by Topolo Mokati and is seconded by Emil Langenhoven. It amends Clause 3.1.1.1, which deals with the criteria for youth membership, and this amendment deals with the upper age limit for youth, proposing that that be amended from 31 to 35. With that, I'm going to hand over to Topolo from the Western Cape. He is online. Topolo, let's cross to you now.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, all due protocol observed. Amendment 10's arguments will deal with three primary issues. Number one, the definition of youth. Number two, the benefit of extending it to 35. And number three, rebuttals as to some of the misconceptions which are brought about by this particular amendment. Now, the National Youth Commission Act 19 of 1996 defines youth between the bracket of 14 and 35. This particular bracket is extended to the African Youth Charter. Now, while there's an argument that says that our view is myopic in our definition, the American definition bears the same definition while splitting them by junior youth, 14 to 24, and senior youth, 25 to 35, albeit having different integrate goals, but having universal difficulties of social and political proportions. Our very own party has a Dear Young Leaders program which presents the maximum age limit to 35. Extending to 35 benefits the DA youth in terms of allowing an age bracket which becomes politically aware to provide more value to the DA youth in terms of knowledge. It also enables us as a youth to speak to a demographic which is acquainted with 35 as the age bracket. The DA youth guidelines make it near impossible to create career youth politicians, given that the current cutoff age is 31. Membership is automatically terminated. Creating extended criteria of the social status of someone could exclude an individual who is 21 but is beyond the social status, and this is an argument that is presented by the CRC. Compounded with the fact that it is constitutional within our own constitution to have such social status criteria, and then this makes that particular point not even worth contending or arguing about. I'm very proud to propose this amendment.
Thank you very much, Topolo. The seconder on this item is Emil Langenhoven from the Western Cape. He's online. He has 1 minute. Go ahead, Emil.
Thank you, delegates. The review committee states that a person aged 35 is often married, working with children, and does not fit the profile of youth. Let's break down the facts. In the 2016 census report by Stats SA, only 77% of youth aged 15 to 19 have married. In the same report, in the age group 30 to 34, 80.6% of females have had a child. But if we are to use that criteria to determine youth, we would need to exclude ages 25 to 29, of whom 70.5% of females have had a child. Statista.com reports that in Q1 2020, unemployment rate for 25 to 34 is 37.3%. This was pre-lockdown and has inevitably increased since. The criteria for classifying one as youth is therefore very inaccurate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emile. Our first contributing speaker is Carl Popham from the Western Cape. He's at the Cape Town Civic Centre. You have the floor, Carl.
Thanks so much, Kev, and I'm not going to prolong it longer than it needs to be. The ANC and this broken national government will never be a metric or benchmark for our party to take decisions. This is not a constitutional principle. This is ANC policy and legislation that supports that. As the DA youth, we need to be different. We need to show that we will speak to the real issues of youth and not someone who's well on their way to a midlife crisis. I encourage every single delegate to not support this amendment and to maintain the status quo as it has been. Thanks, Kev.
Thank you very much, Carl. Up next, we have Fred Nell from Gauteng. He's at Pumulani Lodge in Kempton Park. Let's have it, Fred.
Hi, everybody. Greetings from Pretoria. I would like to oppose this amendment because the world standard for measuring youth and voter turnout is actually 29 years old. And the IEC measures youth with voter turnout also as 29 years old. And I think we should actually drop the age to 29 to align with accepted standards, and also to make sure that we can focus properly on youth voters and youth voter turnout. Just like my friend Celia Brink, I also progressed to senior politics at 23 already, and I think we shouldn't pigeonhole people in an age bracket for too long. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Up next, we have Luyolo Mpiti. He's our DA youth leader from Gauteng. He's at Marks Park Club in Randburg. Luyolo, your comments, please.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for the opportunity, and very good afternoon to all delegates. Kevin, I'd like to speak against this particular amendment because I believe that young people, particularly those who are at the age of leaving school, particularly those who are at universities, and particularly young people who are in their early careers, don't have anything to identify with someone who's above the age of 35. And I believe that we really need to start right now to speak to our young people, and not to say that young people who consider themselves young, who are above the age of 31, don't have a space in the DA youth. Of course, you can always come and assist us and help us and advise us. But unfortunately, I don't think those people in that age category speak for young people. So with that, I oppose this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luyolo. Speaker number 4 is Carl Steenekamp from Gauteng. He's online. What can you tell us, Carl?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carl Sebastian Steenekamp. The reason I believe that this constitutional amendment should not be passed is that people in their mid-30s tend not to face the same socio-economic challenges that people in their young 20s tend to face. Someone who might be 34 years of age, tend to already be working, have children, be married, and they also tend to be past the age of having to worry about university prospects, about where the university funding would be coming from. The fact of the matter is that someone in their mid-30s don't fit in the socioeconomic profile of what defines youth. They don't experience the same needs and problems that someone my age are 19 years old face. I also feel like this is just to mimic the ANC in a way, as their maximum age limit is 30 as well. Therefore, I ask you to reject this motion.
Your time is up. Please conclude.
And thank you, Carl. Our next speaker is Malcolm Mafila from Gauteng. He's joining us online. Let's cross to him now.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, I think this amendment, it has some relevance in terms of when you look at the youth, the Young Leaders Program takes young people until the age of 35. And I think that brings relevance into amending this age to 35. However, I have to agree that the other standards internationally are there. So what I think is that we need to support this to bring it in line with Young Leaders Program, or we need to change the Young Leaders Program date. So I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Up next, we have Dikeledi Siloa from Gauteng, joining us from the Zoom platform, and we'll now give the floor to Dikeledi.
Thank you, Kevin. Just from my side, what I would really want to stress out is that there is a big age difference. The global standard is at the age of 29, and there is a grace period that the DA is already pushing by having it till the age of 31. Our challenges as a 29-year-old to the challenges that of an 18, 19-year-old who are coming into the party, who are becoming proactive, is very limited. And I think the DA is open to young people taking up positions that we do not have to use the DA youth as a platform to create career politicians, but young people can find expression in other or platforms within the organization, such as the RECs, the PECs. So there is not a need for us at this point to actually increase the age limit. Thank you.
Thank you, Dikeledi. Up next, we have Alistair Lightburn joining us from the Cape Town Civic Centre. Your comments, Alistair?
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, Democrats. I think to come out clearly and strongly, I support the recommendation of our Constitutional Review Committee not to reject the amendment, because I think it's important. For the last 10 years at DA Congresses, this amendment was rejected, and I think it is important that the DA must refuse to hold itself to the standard set by an ANC government, in which seeks to keep older persons in positions at the expense of the plight of young people, because we're not an ANC light. We're a DA, we're unique, we have our own brand, and we must refuse to set a dangerous precedent of defining and redefining what youth is, as this can and will be potentially be abused in the future.
Thank you. Your time is up. Please.
Thank you, Alistair. Next up, we have Nicole Graham from KZN. She's at the Tropicana Hotel. Nicole, you have 45 seconds.
Thanks, Kevin. I just want to agree with Carl at the outset. I just turned 31 and I'm well on my way to a midlife crisis. So that's definitely a valid point. I think this has been a roundabout argument for far too long. And I think the priorities for DA Youth must be how we make the organization work as best as possible and how we bring new people into the party and bring new people into DA Youth. It shouldn't be how we keep the same people there. DA Youth ideally should be an incubator in the party that shapes and builds talent, and those people then move on to leadership in the party, as many of us have done. It shouldn't be a place where people use it to hold space and create career politician roles like we see in other political parties. I don't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. And the last speaker on this amendment is Pogiso Mtemunye from Gauteng, joining us from the Zoom platform. Pogiso, go ahead.
Thanks, Kevin. And I think, unpopular as it is, I want to support the proposals of this amendment. And part of the reason is what Nicole said, but I'm saying the opposite to what she said. The role of the DA Youth itself it must be seen as a structure that seeks to attract new types of people into the DA who might not necessarily want to engage in matter body politics, but want the freshness and the edge of youth politics. And therefore, we close a large group of people that we could attract into the party. And hence, the weakness of the DA Youth over time was that you lose its leaders quite early, and it is unable to make the impact that it needs to make. By making this amendment, you are enabling them to be able to strengthen this ancillary in order to do its function, which presently it's not doing at its best because of this.
Thank you very much, Pogiso. That closes the speakers list on Amendment 10. And as indicated on the slide, the Constitutional Review Committee recommends not supporting that amendment. We now move to Amendment 11, which also deals with criteria for youth membership. It's also proposed by Topolo Makati and Emil Langenhoven. It proposes amending Clause 3.1.1.1, and it suggests or proposes making membership of the DA Youth optional, not automatic. I'm now going to ask Topolo to join us again from the Western Cape online. Topolo, let's cross to you now.
Thank you very much. Once again, Amendment 11 deals with two facts. Number one, the freedom of association, and two, aligning ourselves with aligning the current constitution with what we have on the manual application form. Now, the manual application form is in agreement with the sentiment of freedom of association, and freedom of association becomes a very key principle within and a very key value within our party and within our constitution. So, therefore, by having an opt-out, we're therefore imposing onto someone that they should be part of the association, or rather be part of the ancillary organization, whether they want to or not, and then only to opt out afterwards. Now, the opt-in then says that you have the option to associate yourself or to not associate yourself with the particular ancillary organization. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Topolo. The seconder is Emil Longenhoven from the Western Cape. He's also joining us online. Are you there, Emil?
Yes, I am. Great. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Emil, go ahead.
Thank you. I've just been unmuted. I don't have much to add to this other than I concur with the proposer and the Constitutional Review Committee. Thank you.
Emil, and our only contributing speaker on this item is Luyolo Mpiti from Gauteng at the Marks Park Club. Luyolo, your comments?
Thank you very much, Kevin, for the opportunity. In principle, I do support this amendment, but I would like to say that I think it gives us an opportunity as the Dear Youth to be able to take full ownership of our membership and be able to stand for this particular membership so that we build and grow the organization of the Dear Youth. I do want to say, though, that this amendment needs to come with support to ensure that we have the necessary machinery and staff members in place to ensure that the Dear Youth has full control of this membership and that we can hold this membership as a benchmark to see our growth in the Dear Youth and be able to win new young people into the Dear Youth. So in principle, I support this, and I believe that the party needs to ensure that we can be given the necessary means to ensure we can handle our membership by ourselves with the necessary support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luyolo. As indicated, the Constitutional Review Committee recommends supporting this amendment because nobody should be a member of something they haven't signed up for. This is a basic tenet of freedom of association and disassociation, and we should not require our younger members to automatically belong to the DA Youth. We're now going to look at Amendment 12. This is also proposed by Topolo and Emil. It amends Clause 3.1.1.8, which is criteria for membership. Sorry, I apologize. We've dealt with 3, so we're going to go to a poll before we deal with Amendment 12. I'm now going to ask that the poll be brought up. If it does not appear on your screen, please click on the poll button, and it should come up for you. Can we please bring up the voting?
Well, voting is now currently underway around the constitutional amendments that have been put forward, and this is around the definition of youth as per the Democratic Alliance's young members, and also looking into that option on whether they opt in or opt out. Now, let's look at this. The Democratic Alliance's head of policy, Gwen Ngwenya, says poverty in South Africa has little to do with race and more with politics of the governing party. Our reporter Natasha Phiri is following the Democratic Alliance's story very closely. Natasha, good afternoon and welcome to SA Today. I want to start off this conversation by asking you, having covered the ANC's Elective Conference and also now the EFF's Elective Congress, and now you have the Democratic Alliance's Elective Congress that is happening, but it's virtual. Just the feel and texture of it, how different is it?
Well, very good afternoon to you, Eldon, and of course to our SABC viewers. Well, it's quite different. It's the first of its kind. Might I add that I'm not used to such things, as I'm not, so techno-savvy as some may put it, but I'm actually learning as, the day actually progresses. As I've mentioned, that it is the first of its kind virtual elective congress to take place in the history of South Africa, and of course those 2,000 DA delegates across all 9 9 provinces are actually taking place and participating in this 2-day elective Congress. Aldrin, we've also been told by the DA that 38 hybrid centers have been set out throughout the nation, where DA members who don't have access to the internet or Wi-Fi can actually go, and they will be allocated with devices such as laptops where they can actually vote. And currently what's taking place, debate and adopt or reject the proposed constitutional amendments. As you've actually correctly cited earlier on, that these constitutional amendments are actually currently taking place, and what we've just heard right now is the amendment that was on youth membership. What we heard earlier on from the previous amendments are amendments around the values and the principles of the party, the division, the clear division between the concept of the governing party and the state, access to quality education, whether or not to create a deputy federal leader position, establishing a governance committee to advise DA governments, and so forth. So this process will take place throughout the evening. The lines are also open for delegates to actually vote for their candidate of choice, whether it will be the young 32-year-old Mbali Ntuli or 44-year-old John Steenhuisen. We actually heard them talk a while back earlier on around 11 a.m. giving their final candidate speeches, and it started off with Mbali Ntuli, who had said that she wants to change the manner of politics and the way of politics in the country. It's time a young person actually leads the DA in this country. And I understand that she's also spoken, I beg your pardon, to our colleagues in KZN, and just saying to them that she has put up a formidable campaign but will accept any other outcome. We've also heard from the likes of John Steenhuisen, who he himself has described himself as I beg your pardon, battle-tested within the party. Also then took a swipe at the media there, saying that, he wants to get rid of the culture of ill discipline, the toxic culture of ill discipline within the party. He wants to ensure that if he is elected as the DA federal leader, Aldrin, he will stop the leaking of information to the media. He'll ensure that there are no more internal squabbles. Instead, the DA will then have to deal with the mandate that they actually get from the voters. But I mean, when looking at both of these candidates, Aldrin, who all hail from the KZN province, they are tried and tested members of the DA. They've both worked up through the ranks of the DA. I mean, Mbali Ntuli has served in the DA for 14 years. You have John Steenhuisen, who served within the DA for around 22 years in the party, and they've both played a crucial role in the growth of the DA in the province. And Mbali Ntuli, specifically with reaching out to, the underprivileged, disadvantaged communities within KZN, reaching out to those within the villages, within the townships and suburbians, as she alluded in her speech earlier on. Both these members have been, endorsed by senior leaders within the party. So it'll be quite interesting to know from tomorrow, because we know that the leader of the DA will be announced around 3:30 tomorrow, who the new leader of the DA will be, which direction they'll be taking the party, as in respects to the upcoming by-elections that will be taking place on the 11th of November this year, and the 2021 local government elections, Aldrin, that will be taking place next year between the period of August and November. But a huge challenge for them will be to actually retain their votes. We all know that they've been dealt a blow at last year's 2019 government elections. I think their vote participation has been around 20.77 as opposed to 23% or over 23% in the previous national elections.
Well, and that's quite important, because when we think about the Democratic Alliance being the official opposition, the question that I had in mind is that as these delegates go in to cast their ballot, are they thinking about who should be the next leader of the Democratic Alliance, or is it about who should be the next leader of the Democratic Alliance who has what it takes to become the president of the country?
Alden, it could be either or. I mean, when speaking to political analysts this past week, they had said that, for black voters within the party, they want to see a leader who will take, issues of race within the party quite seriously. I mean, a challenge within the DA that they're facing right now is a policy uncertainty, especially about race politics within the DA. Some have said that, in the broader public, just looking at discussions on social media, some have said that, the DA is somewhat a white party, or a party that actually has the interest of white people rather than black people. But we've heard analysts also say that, I mean, if Mbalini Ntuli actually wins as DA leader, she'll actually have to tackle such issues because, I mean, in her campaign, which is themed free, fair and strong, she had said that she wants to deal with issues of redress within the party. But others have said that, if John Steenhuisen actually wins, he'll actually consolidate, the white votes within the party. We've heard the EFF leader, Julius Malema, say on Monday, and reiterating those sentiments, that Helen Zille will have to consolidate racist votes within the party, in his own words, if John Steenhuisen actually wins. Some have criticized Mbalini Ntuli of being too young to actually lead the DA, saying that she's quite inexperienced compared to John Steenhuisen, who served for 22 years in the party. I mean, he started as a DA councillor. He worked himself up as a party leader or caucus leader within the KZN legislature, was then the provincial leader, and we all know that he served as a DA chief whip under Musi Maimani's tenure, before Musi Maimane actually stepped down as party leader last year on the 23rd of October 2019. And now he's actually the incumbent. Some people saying that John Steenhuisen actually has the upper hand, Aldrin, as he's the incumbent leader of the DA. So, I mean, when these delegates actually have all of this to actually put into consideration while actually voting and determining who the next party leader of the DA will be.
Yeah, and I just quickly want to touch on what Gwen Ngwenya has said, and this is now the issue around race and also the argument around the economic justice policy that has been adopted by the party, that race shouldn't really matter. And you've just touched now on, for instance, if the party was to go out and campaign for votes, how would it be able to articulate that particular position?
Definitely, Aldrin. I mean, we heard the DA head of policy earlier on, Gwen Ngwenya, say that poverty in South Africa has little to do with race and more to do with the policies of the governing party. In her own words, she had said that the South African government has created an environment where it is easy to do business and get ahead in life if you have a political connection. And just judging by, the sentiments of social media, some agreeing with the sentiment, some not at all agreeing with the sentiment. I just saw a tweet coming in from one person on social media saying that, I mean, if these are the sentiments of the DA's head of policy, then he doesn't see himself voting for the DA. Further going on to say that if Mbalini Ntuli is not elected as the leader of the DA, then they can actually miss his point. So I guess these are certain things that DA members will have to actually deliberate on, certain policies that DA members will have to deliberate on, so that, coming forward from this, whoever is elected as a DA leader then needs to articulate the policies of the DA quite clearly, seeing that the 2021 local government elections are just around the corner and the by-elections are actually just 2 weeks away from now.
Thank you so much for that, Natasha Phiri. But I have to say, Natasha, that on the flip side, at least, you get to follow the conference from your desk. So no hustling from any security officers. That is SABC political reporter Natasha Phiri there following the DA's virtual conference. We're going to go back into the virtual conference that is currently underway, and the focus is around the amendment of the party's constitution.
Cape Online to motivate his amendment. Topolo?
Thank you very much. We withdraw it in favor of Amendment 13. Thank you.
I have had a request that this amendment be withdrawn. I'm from the proposer. I'm just going to check from Emil Langenhoven if that is withdrawn from his side as well. Emil?
Yes, I concur, Kevin.
Okay, the proposer and seconder having withdrawn Amendment 12, it is now withdrawn. We're now going to move on to Amendment 13. Amendment 13 has been proposed by Ashel Sarapin and Bobby Stevenson, and it comprehensively amends Clause 3.22 and inserts a new Clause 3.23. I'm now going to ask Ashel Sarapin, who's joining us online from Gauteng, to motivate his amendment.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, with regards to this amendment, it is quite substantial, and it changes the way that we handle people whose membership is terminated or cessated. And what it does is it means that if you are found guilty of misconduct by the party, if your membership cessates because you, for example, joined another party, or if you try to leave in the middle of your disciplinary, your membership is now perpetually terminated or ceased. Even if you fill in a form online or a physical form and submit to the party, that doesn't mean you have a valid membership. And it will solve the problem that we have of people who sign up online and come back and try to get themselves into council or legislatures or parliament after trashing the party constantly and then trying to sneak a way back in. And it will ensure that people who abuse these processes can no longer abuse our membership process. It clarifies when membership of termination or cessation is perpetual, and ensures that only the relevant executive, mainly the federal executive, readmits a member who left under dubious circumstances or was cessated. It has been approved by the Constitutional Review Committee, and I do urge delegates to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashel. We're now joined by Bobby Stevenson from the Eastern Cape. He's online to second this motion. Bobby?
I greet all the delegates from the Eastern Cape, where our great party was launched many years ago. Our party is not a doormat that people can wipe their feet on, trash us and bash us in the media when they leave under a cloud and then want to come waltzing back by joining online. This amendment seeks to tighten up the procedures, but still leaves the door open for the prodigals to return, subject to stricter regulation. For those of us who want to uphold the dignity and pride of our party, I would urge you to support this amendment. We are now entering into a new season. The winter is behind us. We are in a new spring, and this amendment will help us on that journey to fix our party. Please, delegates, give it the green light. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bobby. As indicated on the slide, the Constitutional Review Committee supports this because it clarifies the exclusion of members whose membership has ceased and or been terminated, as well as those who resign to join, campaign for, or support another political party, or who resign during party disciplinary processes. And it also notes that when a person manages to apply online, for example, this does not mean that they have necessarily and legitimately rejoined and become a member until the process has been finalized. So we are proposing that you support that amendment. I'm now going to move to Amendment 14, which deals with dual membership and addresses Clause 3.4 of the Constitution. It has been proposed by Topolo Makati and seconded by Emil Langenhoven. As indicated before, Topolo is joining us online from the Western Cape, and we're now going to cross to him.
Thank you very much. Amendment 14 deals with, or our amendment deals with the fact that we want to set a timeline whereby the dual membership clause becomes a single membership. Understand that the current clause is in perpetual limbo and has got an undefined time. However, noting that that membership audits might come before such a membership, or rather before there's a time to actually merge, there's a paragraph that allows for the Federal Council to make suggestions, or rather to make conditions and to set a timeline for itself. Hence why we are proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Topolo. I'm now going to hand to Emil, also from the Western Cape online, to give us his views on the matter. Emil.
Thank you, Kevin. The question of dual membership is a matter of alliance versus assimilation. The dictionary defines the word alliance as a merging of efforts or interests by persons, families, states, or organizations. As a democratic alliance, we see ourselves doing this in our coalition governments, anchoring them with our values and principles and working towards our common goals. On the other hand, the dictionary defines assimilation as the state or condition of being assimilated or being absorbed into something. We have done this with the NNP and the ID with some very adverse effects. When coalitions break down, parties go their own way without damaging the party itself. However, when they are absorbed into the party and then decide to split from the party, the internal damage is immeasurable and requires much repair. We are proposing that we pause this process until the next membership audit so as to give it time for integration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emile. I have no contributing speakers on this amendment, but you will note from the slide that the Constitutional Review Committee recommends not supporting this amendment. The reason for this is as follows. The purpose of the original clause was to permit dual membership of the party during the period when the party was amalgamating with another. Since this typically takes a longer time frame than the membership audit cycle, it is necessary to allow a certain amount of flexibility in the process. This is accomplished in the original clause through the statement, and I quote, "for the period and on conditions determined by Federal Council." The time limit of until the next membership audit does not permit such flexibility and will not allow Federal Council to determine what time frame is appropriate for such an amalgamation process. With that, we are now going to open the vote. We are going to vote on amendments 13 and 14. Amendment 12 has been withdrawn, so it's only amendment 13 and 14. Can we bring up the polls, please?
And voting is now underway for those amendments, Amendments 13 and Amendments 14, looking at the exclusion of party members who may have resigned during disciplinary processes as well, and also the amendment on the clause that allows the Federal Council to have, that allows members of the party rather to have dual membership and have a time frame being attached to that. Well, for more analysis,